You ever get that gut feeling that something shady's going on behind your back? Well, that's exactly what I felt the moment I saw construction trucks creeping toward my private road without so much as a heads up. At first, I thought maybe it was a delivery gone wrong. But nope. It turns out the HOA in the neighborhood next to my land had their own little plan cooking. They wanted to build new homes, and the fastest route for their equipment just happened to be Surprise. Surprise right through my private road. The road I paid for, maintained, and owned outright. No easements, no shared access, nothing. I tried to be reasonable. I reached out. I gave them a chance to explain. But instead of honesty, I got deflection, then silence. The HOA board kept pretending like it was all a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, more trucks started showing up, and survey flags started popping up like weeds. They were moving fast, hoping I wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. But here's the thing. I don't roll over. If they thought I was going to, let them bulldoze their way across my land without a battle. They had another thing coming. And that's when I discovered something game-changing. The tiny entry lot they planned to use as a shortcut. It was actually for sale. Yeah, they didn't even own it yet. So guess who scooped it up before they could? I didn't just buy the lot. I built something on it. Something they couldn't ignore, couldn't go around, and definitely couldn't drive through. Let's just say it was a barrier they didn't see coming. And when the HOA realized what I did, things got real heated, real fast. Stick around, because what happened next? It turned this land dispute into a full-blown neighborhood standoff. Let me back up a little, so you understand just how wild this all was. I live on a quiet piece of land, just outside a suburban development. That's controlled by one of those strict HOAs, the kind that fines people for having the wrong shade of mulch or leaving their trash cans out for 5 extra minutes. My land isn't part of their neighborhood, and thank God for that. I've always valued my privacy, and I built my place to get away from all that micromanaging nonsense. Years ago, I had a private gravel road put in so I could have easy access to my property. I paid for every inch of it, got the permits, maintained it, everything. It was mine legally and literally. That road was never meant to be shared, especially not with a construction crew bringing in bulldozers and dump trucks for some new housing expansion. But the HOA, in their usual sneaky fashion, had a different idea. They figured they'd just quietly start using my road as their shortcut. To avoid tearing up their own streets, now, here's where it gets even sketchier. When I started digging into how they planned this, I found out they'd been working behind the scenes for months. I heard from a neighbor that the board had already approved their contractor's route, which included my road without saying a word to me. They were betting I'd either be clueless or too slow to react. They even started telling residents in their community that construction was going to begin soon, acting like everything was already set in stone. That's when I checked the county records and saw that the access lot they were counting on hadn't officially changed hands yet. And just like that, I made my move. But what I did after buying it? That's when things started to spiral in ways none of us saw coming. After I bought that access lot, things got quiet, too quiet. For a few days, there were no trucks, no survey crews, no movement at all. I could feel the tension building, like they were regrouping behind closed doors. Then, out of nowhere, I got a letter taped to my mailbox. Not mailed taped. It was from the HOA's attorney, full of legal jargon and vague threats. They claimed I was interfering with a public utility easement, even though I knew for a fact there wasn't one. They were fishing, trying to scare me into backing off. But I wasn't budging. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers from some of the residents over there. A few of them were actually on my side. Turns out, not everyone in the HOA was thrilled about the construction either. One woman, Karen Ya, her real name, had been trying to stop the expansion for months. She said the board ignored safety concerns and rushed the approvals. We ended up talking one evening at the property line, and she told me some board members had personal connections with the builder. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my road debt, was about backdoor deals, shady decisions, and a whole lot of people turning a blind eye. At the same time, my inbox started blowing up with emails from the HOA board. They switched from threats to fake friendliness, offering to negotiate a mutual solution if I'd allow temporary construction access. But I knew better. Temporary always turns permanent with them. And besides, I had already built a steel gate on the entry lot, complete with cameras and motion lights. They weren't getting through without a fight. But just when I thought I had the upper hand, a new crew showed up this time, not from the original contractor. And they weren't using my access point. That's when I realized the HOA might be planning something even bigger and sneakier. Just when I thought I had a handle on things, the situation took a sharp turn. The new crew that showed up wasn't messing around. They came with heavy equipment and a clear goal: to create a completely new access point that would bypass my gate entirely. It was like they had a backup plan all along, something I hadn't expected. Suddenly, the quiet standoff turned into a full-scale challenge to my property rights. I started noticing signs being posted around the edge of my land. Warning of private property and no trespassing, but the crews seemed to ignore them. Then one morning, I caught one of the workers trying to pry open my gate, even though the security cameras were rolling. That was when I realized this was no longer just about construction access. It was about control, about sending a message that my ownership didn't mean much to the HOA or their contractors. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Neighbors who had stayed neutral began picking sides, gossip spreading like wildfire. The HOA board ramped up their public relations, posting on community forums that the construction was necessary for growth and approved by all relevant authorities, carefully leaving out any mention of the private road or the entry lot I bought. Meanwhile, Karen and a handful of other residents kept rallying behind me, trying to organize petitions and public meetings to push back against the board's heavy-handed tactics. At night, sit by my window watching headlights flash by as surveyors and workers roamed near my property line. The sound of engines and machinery felt like an invasion, each passing day increasing the risk that someone would cross a line, not just legally. I was ready to protect what was mine, but I knew this was about to come to a head. The HOA wasn't going to back down, and neither was I. With construction deadlines looming and tempers flaring, it felt like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable showdown. What would happen when the HOA tried to break through the barrier I built? That's the moment everything would change. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, a new twist hit me like a lightning bolt. One evening, I received a call from a local city official, not the HOA, but someone completely unexpected. They said the construction project had serious code violations and environmental concerns that nobody in the HOA wanted to admit. Apparently, the land the HOA was trying to develop was sitting on protected wetlands, and the city had been investigating quietly behind the scenes. This wasn't just about my private road anymore. It was about whether the whole project was even legal to begin with. That revelation sent shockwaves through everything. Suddenly, the HOA's push to use my road felt like just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, one involving potential fines, permits being revoked, and the city stepping in to halt construction altogether. But here's the catch. The HOA board didn't want the neighborhood to know about any of this. They started ramping up their pressure on me, trying to portray me as the troublemaker blocking progress. Their emails became more aggressive, and the security presence around the lot I owned suddenly doubled overnight. Meanwhile, some of the residents who had been quiet before started coming forward with their own stories, complaints about the HOA ignoring safety issues, pushing through plans without proper community input, even accusations of favoritism and corruption. The neighborhood was dividing, and I found myself caught in the middle of a political storm I never signed up for. To make matters worse, the construction crews, now aware of the city investigation, began working at odd hours, almost like they were trying to rush through before anything could stop them. The noise, the lights, the constant activity was wearing everyone down. And my barrier. It was holding for now, but the HOA's determination was clear. They were going to find a way in. No matter what it took, the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just about a private road anymore. It was about a neighborhood on the brink of chaos, a fight for control, and a battle where the rules kept shifting. And right in the middle of it all was me, trying to stand my ground against a force that wasn't ready to quit. The day everything came to a head was like something out of a movie. Early morning, the HOA showed up with a squad of lawyers, contractors, and security guards, all claiming they had court orders to remove my gate and use the access lot immediately. I stood my ground, backed by my own legal counsel who had already filed an injunction. Based on the private ownership of the lot and the questionable easement claims the HOA made. The tension was thick. Neighbors gathered on both sides, some cheering me on, others siding with the HOA. But everyone watching closely. The HOA's lawyers pushed hard, waving papers and insisting their permits covered the access. But when my attorney presented the city's investigation into the wetlands and code violations, the whole atmosphere shifted. The HOA's confident front cracked, and suddenly their approved construction plans looked shaky. The city official appeared, stopping the crews and declaring an immediate halt to the project until the environmental concerns were addressed. It was a huge win finally. Someone held the HOA accountable for trying to bulldoze through not just my land, but protected territory. But just when it seemed like the battle was won, a new problem surfaced. As the crews packed up, a local reporter arrived with footage showing the HOA board secretly negotiating to buy up more surrounding properties, hoping to create an access route that would completely bypass any private roads, including mine. It was a bigger land grab than anyone realized, and it wasn't going to stop just because one barrier stood in their way. That's when I realized this fight wasn't just about a road or even one neighborhood anymore. It was about standing up to those who think they can take what they want, no matter the rules or people affected. I had won this round, but the battle for control, respect, and the future of the land was far from over. And if there's one thing I learned, sometimes the best defense is knowing when to stand firm and when to prepare for what comes next. After the city stepped in and construction was halted, things finally started to settle. The HOA had to put their plans on pause, facing serious questions from officials and the community. The residents who had been divided began to come together, realizing that this wasn't just about development, it was about respecting property rights and protecting the environment. Even some board members who'd stayed quiet started pushing for more transparency, showing that change was possible when people stood up and spoke out. I kept the gate and the barrier in place, not as a weapon, but as a symbol that private land and community voices matter. The conversations around the neighborhood shifted from conflict to collaboration. And though the fight had been tough, it opened up space for dialogue about how growth should happen responsibly. Karen and a few others formed a local group to monitor any future projects, making sure no one could sneak something past the people again. Looking back, this experience taught me a lot about the power of standing firm on what's yours and knowing when to fight for it. The HOA thought they could push through their plans without question, but they underestimated the strength of one person who refused to be ignored. It's a reminder that property rights aren't just legal terms. They're about respect, trust, and the community we build around them. The road, the lot, the gate, they became more than just physical things. They became a boundary that protected not only my land, but the principles that should guide all development. This story didn't just end with a barrier built. It ended with a neighborhood waking up to its power and potential. And though the fight isn't over forever, it's clear that when people come together, change is possible. And sometimes the best way forward starts with saying no.